The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and the other begins? Edgar Allan Poe. Death is an inevitability all living things must face. What that inevitability means is up for question. Most religions and belief systems address what death could mean for us, usually saying it's more than just a physiological phenomenon. In this video, I'll be examining how some religions we've covered tackle this topic and see what conclusions we can draw from them. The first belief system I'll talk about is Confucianism. Examining the Analects, death, and especially the afterlife are never talked about directly. Instead, the focus is more on coping with death and respecting the dead through rituals like funerals and burial rites. For example, Book 1 verse 9 says, quote, Master Jen, a disciple of Confucius, said, "Tend carefully to death rites, and pay reverence to those long departed, and the people will in the end be rich in virtue." End quote. Confucius' focus was more on teaching us how to live a proper life rather than worrying about what comes after. Quote, Jilu asked, "How should one serve the gods and spirits?" The master said, "When you don't yet know how to serve human beings, how can you serve the spirits?" Jilu said, "May I venture to ask about death?" The master said, "When you don't yet understand life, how can you understand death?" Book 11, verse 12. Here, Confucius says to understand death, you must fully realize life first, as if examining two sides of the same coin. It is important to accept the reality of death, but, more than that, Confucianism teaches it's essential we learn how to cope with the concept and live humanely by following the traditions of those that came before us. But when examining other belief systems, like religions, they tend to directly address the afterlife. For example, the Abrahamic faiths of Christianity and Islam believe in something beyond just death, that being heaven and hell. Both religions hold that entering heaven, or paradise, depend on living a good moral life, following religious doctrine and rituals, and, more importantly, the belief or faith in a single God. As for hell, this place exists as eternal punishment for those condemned, a popular interpretation being Dante's Inferno. However, these two religions differ in many ways, like their interpretations of heaven. Jannah in Islam seems more like a physical paradise. For example, the Quran states, quote, "Give good news, O Prophet, to those who believe and do good, that they will have gardens under which rivers flow. Whenever provided with fruit, they will say, 'This is what we were given before,' for they will be served fruit that looks similar, but tastes different. They will have pure spouses, and they will be there forever." Chapter 2, verse 25. In comparison, Christian heaven seems more like a unison with God, and requires a belief in Jesus Christ and the Holy Trinity. As the Bible states, Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live, and everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die." Do you believe this? John 11, verse 25 to 26. There is also purgatory, which the Vatican describes as those, quote, "still imperfectly purified go to earn their way into heaven." Catechism 10:30. Still, in both faiths, followers act in accordance to their belief in God and how God would want them to behave, having given them life and meaning. Death may mark the end of this life, but one's faith goes beyond that. Those that believe and act faithfully will transcend above, while everyone else is condemned. But this isn't the only interpretation of the afterlife. Another popular belief held by Buddhism and Hinduism is samsara, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. With each rebirth, your next life is dependent on the actions of your last, following a good and bad karmic system. Eventually, you can break out of this cycle, but the specifics on how this is done are different. In Hinduism, moksha is your internal soul breaking out of the cycle and reuniting with Brahman, or, quote, "the supreme cosmic power, ontological ground of being, and the source and goal and purpose of all spiritual knowledge," according to the New World Encyclopedia. For Buddhism, there is no eternal self, since impermanence is a key religious concept. Instead, achieving nirvana means freeing oneself from desire and suffering, transcending beyond the cycle. Interestingly, the Buddha chose to remain silent on what is beyond this point. Quote, "He did not deny or affirm, but chooses silence, a strategic silence that is not really devoid of content, according to the secular Buddhist network." But regardless, death isn't the end of one's journey here either. Instead, it is a brief transitional period until your next life. Unlike the Abrahamic faith, you can get an infinite amount of attempts, living many different lives until you may transcend beyond the cycle. In the end, we will never know fully what happens after we die. The only certainty here is death itself. Even still, the belief systems we examined give out some answers to anyone listening. Whether that be a final judgment, or we continue to another form, these faiths try and give some semblance of certainty and meaning in our life. They act as guides, with ritualistic practices and doctrines on how to live everyday life. But, in the end, It is an individual, subjective decision into what we believe when we ponder and cope with the end of our lives.